Welcome, fiends, to Handle with Scare, presented by the Slash and Cast Podcast Network. Our show discusses horror movies and the phobias that they emphasize. We are towards the start of our deep dive of botanophobia, which is the fear of plants, and we kicked off this past week with some musical comedy in Little Shop of Horrors, and tonight we really just have to question, like, what the hell is actually happening, because John's pick tonight really doesn't need an introduction because it's one of the more jarring M. Night movies out there, to say the least. Rotten Tomato score not really improved over the course of the years. Mark Wahlberg's gone on record saying that he absolutely hates this movie. We'll discuss why. Yeah, so we're going to be talking about the happening here tonight on the podcast. But of course, as you can see, I am joined by my co-host, Holly Hooch and John. Guys, how you doing tonight?
Hey, you're doing good?
Good. Nice.
John's super excited about this movie.
I loved it. It was really good.
I was, I love like following up and watching other reviews, and I will say, like, this thing has a cult following. Like, almost all the reviews I saw, except for one, were like, "It's horrible. I love it. I watch it 5 times a year. It's insane."
I had to pick it because I'd never seen it, so it seemed like a good opportunity to watch it.
I got it confused with The Crazies. I thought it was The Crazies.
From the 80s? Or I think there's a remake.
Yeah, the remake.
Mm-hmm. Which I don't think I've actually seen that movie either. But I had to pick it. I had heard it was bad, but the thing is, so M. Night, obviously, he's maybe the definition of hit or miss with his directing and writing and everything. And I've only, I obviously The Sixth Sense is a great movie. And that's, I think obviously the movie that probably let the studio tell him that he could just do whatever he wanted.
M. Night.
Exactly. And
everything you touch is gold.
I mean, for his movies, I've never before this I'd never really seen it's hard to say like a bad movie by him because I'd seen Unbreakable.
It's great.
Which is a good movie and is very ahead of its time. Like, that movie came out really before the Heroes TV show. Remember Heroes?
Yeah.
And that movie maybe defined what like a live action modern superhero movie is in a lot of ways. Even like the Marvel movies, in a sort of way, are, I think, sort of tied to Unbreakable. And Signs isn't that bad. Signs is
great,
pretty cool.
Yeah.
And Signs has that really cool scene where Joaquin Phoenix sees the alien on the news and he freaks out.
Puts on as a tin. Oh, yeah.
Oh, the kid. No, but the meme of him reacting.
Oh,
he's like, oh my God. And he sees the alien on the...
Well, that movie, like, is... you were finishing a thought.
Oh, well, no, I was just saying, like, they're all kind of varying degrees of good. I think Sixth Sense is his best movie, but I'd never seen what the movies that are considered to be his truly bad movies, The Happening, and I've still never seen The Water.
Oh, I haven't seen Lady in the Water, what it's called. And I haven't seen that one either. And I've seen The Village, and I actually didn't mind The Village. I thought the twist was kind of interesting, It's all like... Yeah. It was all a science experiment, basically. Mm-hmm. But I did not like The Happening. I mean, it was... The funniest thing about it, so I watched it with Joe, and I will say that it was like a phones down movie where, like, it kept my attention long enough to, like, not look at my phone, and I was actually engrossed in the movie. And then it hits you that, like, it's been going on for way too long, and nothing's gonna happen. Like, like that point that happens, it usually happens the other way around, where you're like, you get a sense like something, the movie's about to end, and you're like, that can't be right. It's only been 30 minutes. And then you realize that there's this whole other thing that's going to happen in the movie. This was the opposite. This was like, hey, it's been a suspiciously long amount of time, and there's like no fucking monsters. Oh yeah, spoilers. Turns out it's plants. And they don't even move.
Turns out problem was a man.
Turns out.
What's funny, to add to that, when I watch bad movies, that are so there's good. Obviously, everyone knows there's movies that are so bad they're good,
Mm-hmm.
and then there are movies that are literally just bad, and obviously, like I would say, like the truly bad movies are movies that are boring and bad.
I
You
can
know,
see that,
where
sure.
it's always for me where it's like it feels like I've been watching for a long time, and then I'm like, oh man, like how far into this movie am I? And I look at the time, and I've only been watching for like
20
10
minutes.
minutes, yeah, 20 minutes, and it's just like, oh my god, there's still an hour left, and I'm already like over it. But I never during this movie, I never looked. I actually only looked at the clock late into the movie because I was like, oh my god, like I kind of want there to be more of this
Mm-hmm.
movie. I hope it's not going to end.
Oh wow, it really got you. Joey had the funniest reaction. He was really upset he didn't get to see Marky Mark kill himself. Like the whole movie was like, all right, it's gonna happen. I'm like, I don't know, man. It's an M. Night. He usually has an happy ending. Oh my gosh, but I was also disappointed I didn't get to see Mark.
Well, what's great to tie that into the actual movie is one of the reasons why it's kind of been memed to death is because a lot of the action is kind of focused on the reactions by the cast of the movie, primarily with Mark Wahlberg, because there are definitely like those moments where he's like trying to like concentrate. Meanwhile, everyone is basically shooting themselves in the field. And he's like, just give me a minute. And then everyone's like, well, we gotta fucking do something. Like everyone's just dying over here.
Mm-hmm.
But like one of my biggest gripes with this movie isn't just like we don't really see any like the people really aren't afraid of the wind or the plants. It's very science fiction, but that's a completely different thing. But like, it all boils down to the fact that everyone's turned into, like, this high school science teacher as, like, the guy to know what the hell's happening, and he's gonna be the one to figure shit out. Like, right off the bat, just, like, it's completely, like, off the rails. Like, I can't really get into this movie because that would never happen.
Well, yeah, definitely. And I want to start talking about this movie at the beginning because the beginning is so bonkers in terms of introducing the character and Marky Mark.
Marky Mark is a science teacher, yeah.
Yeah, he's the science teacher who, yeah, as you say, everyone's going to look to him to
In Philadelphia, Marky Mark's a scientist.
Yeah, seriously. So when they introduce him, he's a high school teacher teaching his class, and this is where I knew I liked the movie, was in the first 5 minutes. It was love at first sight because so he's in front of the class teaching and he's asking questions of the class, and he asks the sort of
the
good-looking jock kid a question and he doesn't have an answer.
Mm-hmm.
And the jock kid isn't doing anything wrong at all. He just doesn't have an answer to the question. Is all that's happened.
Which is also a really big question. It's like, why are the honeybees dying? Holy shit, Marky Mark. He's just 15.
And then, so he doesn't have an answer to the question, and then Marky Mark basically proceeds to destroy his entire life. Basically like, well, your nose is going to grow, and your ears are going to grow, and you're going to be ugly and useless, and your brain, you're dumb.
Yeah, you should probably pick up some skills, man.
I know. And he, just out of nowhere, it's not like we saw this kid bullying anybody.
And it was great because he's like, you have a perfect face. It's not going to stay that way forever. Oh, take it easy, Mark.
I know. Easy, Mark. And then that other teacher shows up, or maybe she's the principal or something, and he turns off the lights and like tries to hide and acts all weird. And I was just like, what? This is insane. Because obviously with a movie, when you're introduced to a character, you're the hero. Mm-hmm. This is supposed to be making us like him and want to be like, he's our guy that we're following. And he's horrible right off the bat. He's such a jerk. And then he's mean to, he makes some, I don't know if it's like a Star Wars reference, but he makes some reference about the woman who shows up too, where he's like, oh my God. Like,
I missed that.
But it felt also very like, hello, fellow kids, you know, that meme
Oh
of
yeah.
Steve Buscemi? Like, he was trying to be, like, way too relatable to the high school kids, you know?
And I'm so disconnected from like children and even high school kids that I'm like, I don't even know what it looks like these days. But then they have like the guy from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and that was like his only like 2 minutes of like screen time. Like, is he really that inexpensive? Could we hire this guy to come and be on our podcast team? Can we look into that?
This movie, that raises a good point too, because this movie does a weird, really weird thing where it constantly makes you think that these little side characters
Are going to be a bigger part of the
characters.
movie. Yeah.
I thought the kid who he destroyed was going to be a character in the story because of how much
attention
they
he got.
interacted. Yeah, and
it's just because he was good looking.
And then you just never see them again.
And he was only okay, but I guess that's a 15-year-old. You know, it's just like, I don't understand what's going on. Oh my gosh! And then enter John Leguizamo.
Yeah, who's always, I like John Leguizamo. He's always good.
I like him a lot, but in this particular, both of them, right? Okay, so no offense, high school teachers, but these two guys are like geniuses. Because at one point, like John Leguizamo was like bringing up percentages about how likely they are to die. I'm like, you don't even know what it fucking is, John Leguizamo. How can you tell me what percentage, survival rate I have? He can't.
Also, what he did, that crazy thing, that was another scene I loved. Wasn't that him where he was like trying to distract that other character?
Yes.
So he was
if
like,
I gave you a
if
penny,
I gave you this much,
everybody knows it's 10 million.
I was like, what? I was completely lost immediately on his thing. I would have never been able to answer that question.
Well, that was the point. He was trying to distract her so much that she wouldn't notice the people hanging from trees outside.
So, as you mentioned, there's no, or maybe I think, or both of you, I think, mentioned, there's no monster or threat of any kind.
No, there's just wind in some fucking bushes.
And I feel like that's gotta be M. Night Shyamalan, because from what I'm sure we've all kind of heard and know, like, The Sixth Sense blew up so much.
Right.
People were saying he was the next Spielberg.
Yeah, it was huge.
Yeah, and I feel like, it almost feels like he basically was like, I'm such an amazing writer and director that I'm going to make a horror movie where there's no monster or threat of any kind, really. I mean, there's a sort of a threat, but, and that he could do that, he could show that. But I don't know.
Yeah, well, like one of like my gripes with M. Night just as a director is he's very self-indulgent. Like, he has to be in every aspect of his movie. He has to write it, he has to direct it, he has to produce it, he has to star in the movie, which he does in this too. And it's just like, okay, we get it. Like, you think very highly of yourself. Like, you don't need to be in everything that you do. Like, your fingerprints are already going to be over this project, and you're not really adding really anything to the movie either by doing that.
No. And I think that's the thing too, is you can basically lay all the blame at his feet. Like, I feel like you can't, as bad as Marky Mark and Zoe Deschanel are in this movie, and they are really bad, I feel like you can pretty much put the blame on Shyamalan for that too.
Oh, for sure. I mean, Marky Mark's already proven. I mean, like, I keep calling him Marky Mark because it's emblazoned in my brain.
That's what everyone will.
I can't call him anything else. But I'm actually not trying to put him down. I literally cannot call him anything else. And I always mispronounce his last name anyway. So, but I mean, like, the guy, parlayed like a fucking like music career into an acting career, both of which did really well. I'm not trying to put the man down. And I think, he's kind of, proven himself to be fairly solid in all sorts of... Yeah, awesome. And then all the comedies that he does, he's great. He's fine. And then Zoe Deschanel, like, oh my gosh, she was such a stick in the mud in this one. I mean, I really loved her in New Girl. But, you take those glasses
which was great, because the daughter...
Personality.
Yeah, it's great, because the daughter's name is even her character's name in New Girl. But she's not meant for, like, thrillers or, like, horror movies. She's always been in comedies or dramas.
Or romance.
So she's out of her element in this case.
And her reactions are so weird. Whenever there's like a dramatic scene going on or something crazy happening, they'll cut to the shot of like Marky Mark and her and the kid, and Zoe will be like sort of like she'll be kind of bopping around, smiling and like doing her shtick. And it's like, there's people literally dying around you right now, and you're all kind of like, doo-doo-doo, like.
Except when she needs to bug Marky Mark about not doing anything.
Oh my god, that scene is so good.
Oh, it's so annoying to me because so if I can't figure shit out, like, I won't be so abrasive with somebody else who can't figure it out either. You know what I mean? So that was a little annoying to me. It's like, hey man, you don't have an answer either.
Well, so we should say this movie came out in like 2007 or 8, and this movie does have a twist. Going into it, I thought this was a movie that didn't have a twist, but it does, of course, because being so close to, and where it's also, I realized, the anniversary of 9/11, and 2008 still being really close to 9/11, even though it was like 7 years or 6 years earlier. Still, like the effect of 9/11
lack of
was
a terrorist,
massive.
Component. Is that what you're saying?
Well, you're meant to believe that it's a terrorist attack.
They keep repeating it over and over.
Yeah, the news keeps saying it, and we're meant to think that this is a terrorist attack, that it's a dirty bomb, which is a bomb with like some kind of chemical or biological component that poisons people, and then the twist is that it's the plants. Of course, spoilers. So it's interesting that it's sort of a 9/11 movie in a lot of ways, because it's the whole first act, even the first half of the movie is sort of like, oh, there's this attack and all the people are reacting and we need to like go here and then we need to go here. And
although I will say it didn't really include as much of, like usually these movies have they have those scenes in these kinds of movies where people are flocking to they're running away, and in doing so they trample other people and they hurt other people, they steal from other people. They didn't actually do that at all in this one. Everybody was really nice.
And that's something I wanted to bring up too. Something I made a mental note of was that these were the most well-behaved mobs of terrified victims
I know, right?
ever in a movie. Like, they would stand quietly and attentively in groups while Marky Mark explained his plan to them, and then they would execute the plan exactly the way he asked them to.
Every time somebody stood in front of people, everybody calmly listened and they did as they were told, which incidentally happened to be the most logical plan at the time. Somebody's like, hey, we believe this is happening, let's do it. And everybody's like, yeah. And then in very orderly fashion. I think the meanest thing that happened was like maybe when they were dispersing people, not giving them a ride, which they're within their right. And then of course, the scene where the teenagers got shot. Can we talk about
Wait.
That's too far ahead.
Let's work our way there. We gotta.
Well, like the other part that made me laugh that I thought was like, why the hell would you do that? Is when like the lady's talking to her daughter on the phone and then she puts it on like speaker, like in front of everyone, that she's like having the symptoms. I was like, who does that? Like, that is such a pet peeve of mine. I don't want to hear your fucking conversation like when I'm out with like other people.
And let's also mention, so the effect that this drug has, or whatever we want to call it makes everybody. The effects are also really silly and stupid, where it basically just makes you stop walking, like you just freeze in place.
Yeah.
And then some people, not everybody, take a few steps backwards.
Yeah, it's only like one in a crowd of 100.
Which they really make a point of showing you it when people do that, but it doesn't play into the story in any way or have any significance, but it just happens. It's like, and I guess M. Night thought that was sort of weird and creepy, I guess. He thought that would be scary.
Things going backwards are generally creepy.
But
what was that? And like, you would get hung up on certain words, kind of like what we saw in Pontypool.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Well, and Pontypool, and this movie reminded me of The Signal. Have you seen that one? Came out in like the early 2000s, where a TV signal suddenly starts broadcasting on everybody's TV and drives everybody insane.
That sounds so familiar. Yeah.
Which I also want to point out that as weird and sort of thinking like, M. Night's trying to do something original, but definitely failing at it. The Signal and Pontypool are examples of movies that do this kind of thing, but do it much, much better. I think, it's creepier and scarier.
I think I really would have wanted to see, there's a lot of fungi that attack animals, and it's horrific. I mean, it's pretty fucking vicious. They'll take over, a host body, and they'll make it move like a zombie.
Ants.
There's even one that compels ants to climb up a stalk of grass just so it can be eaten by a cow, and then it's a long story. But long story short, like, this could have been a lot more gruesomer. I think that's one of the reasons I'm a little annoyed with M. Night, is that he didn't give me any gruesomeness. I will say that the death scenes, the ones that were en masse, those were really cool. So, like, the guys jumping off of
that was
the
a
roof,
great shot.
That was a great shot, and it was very chilling to, like, just see, like, and
that's an iconic shot. You see that a lot. Like, you see that in clips.
Yeah.
And stuff, people play that shot a lot of the construction workers.
Right.
And
people hanging themselves was really jarring. It's really chilling too.
Yeah. But I agree. It should have been way more violent and horrifying, because that occurred to me during the scene when there's the traffic and there's the cop.
Oh, and they're all sharing the gun?
Right, and he shoots himself, and then he drops, and then somebody picks it up.
That was kind of good, too. I like that.
But there's all these people kind of standing around in the background motionless, and it's kind of like they're doing it one by one. But it occurred to me that, like, if this makes you want to kill yourself...
Oh, it should have been simultaneous.
Everybody should have just been going crazy. Like, there was and this is my horror brain working, but like my demented thought, but there was like a metal fence, like one of those metal post fences. People should have been like impaling themselves, jamming their heads into those things. People should have been slamming their heads against the ground. It should have been like this horrifying, crazy.
And that would have been very cool. Like, that would have been a really cool scene. In fact, I would like to pause this recording to ask you guys how you would probably kill yourself in the situation. I think I would go with the car method. I think I would drive myself into a tree or something.
The people who drove into the tree.
That was good, too.
John Leguizamo. It's like we thought he was going to be a character.
Bigger part of the movie,
but no, he's in it for about 5 or 10 minutes.
And then, like, the movie has a lot of loopholes, too, of, like, the way that people behave or the obstacles that they couldn't overcome, that you're like, when he's like, they only have seat for one person. She's fucking 7. Sit her on your lap. Don't just fucking leave her with, like, this woman that you don't even like that much.
And I might be remembering this part wrong, but didn't they all show up to that cafe in a bus, or like...
They walked over from the train tracks, maybe?
Did they walk over? I thought there was like a bus load of people that showed up, and then all of a sudden everybody...
They stopped on a train, and they got off the train, right? And that was a whole scene of like... Why aren't we going anywhere? We've lost contact.
Yeah, it was a train. Right,
yeah, it was a train. And then they're like, everyone. Right. And then I don't know if they walked there, or I don't think they would have sent a bus, because they lost communication, right? So they didn't...
They walked the train, and then they walked there. And then all of a sudden, everybody had cars. Because then when they dispersed out of there, everybody got in a car and left.
Yeah, nobody was left.
But I swear... 90% of the people in that cafe
were from that
train who walked there. And I was like, wait a minute, where did all these people suddenly have cars?
But then you do come up to like the cutest, most adorable character, which is Hot Dog Man. Hot Dog Man's the best.
I don't even remember who's Hot Dog Man.
You don't remember Hot Dog Man? The Hot Dog Man is the guy who figured out it was the plants, who talked to the plants,
right?
Who only ate hot dogs.
Who I know I've seen. I forgot to look him up.
Yeah, he's a famous character actor.
Yeah, he's been in a lot of stuff. But he always plays. He
always plays like
crazy,
a crazy farmer or hick kind of dude.
Was he in Crybaby? That Johnny Depp, John Waters movie?
I don't remember.
He plays like a crazy backwoods hick in a movie.
Oh,
but anyways,
we'll look it up at some point.
But yeah, he's great. Yeah, the hot dogs, that was super random.
Well, he's good at giving people a lot of like warmth just by giving them eccentricities, which he did like a shit ton in the movie, and it works. It makes people likable. It makes people more relatable when they're a little weird. Which
also reminds me, because he reminded me, and this movie also reminded me of another bad movie, Maximum Overdrive.
Is that about the killer semi trucks?
That's the Stephen King one with the cars that try to kill everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And famously, Stephen King explains that movie by letting everybody know that he was on a ton of cocaine when he made that movie. And I was thinking, M. Night doesn't have that excuse. Like, he can't say he was on a ton of cocaine when he made The Happening. But at least Stephen King's got an excuse for his crazy.
Yeah, it would have made more sense.
And then, so the kid, I think we can get, because I think that's when the kids hook up with them.
Well, let's see. They end up driving off with the hot dog man, and at that point, it's just them and the little girl and the hot dog man and his wife.
Oh!
They come to a fork in the road.
Can we roll back 1 minute just for a quick thing? I wanted to point out too. Mental note was when John Leguizamo hands over his kid to them.
Yeah.
And Zooey Deschanel's gonna grab her hand.
Don't you take her hand. You don't mean it. You don't mean it.
And then the music goes dun 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 dun.
And it's just like, fuck, I guess I'll use
it. Seriously.
Just trying to be nice.
It's like,
well, here's the thing too. Like, obviously, he doesn't like Zoe's character because, like, she saw him the night of the wedding or whatever, and it's just like, well, then why are you giving her your daughter? And you basically are pretty sure that you're probably never going to reunite with them because of everything happening around you at that point. But like, it felt like so forced. Like, okay, now you as a couple have to stay together because the whole time, like, they're fighting with one another. He's got a severe attachment to, like, this mood ring that happens to be, like, from their first date, and that, comes into play later on in the movie. And then the part with the mood ring that, like, really was like, what the hell, guys? It's like, well, what color is love? It's red. Obviously, it's red. But neither of them knew it. Like, that's supposed to be the guy with all the answers. And he didn't even know something so simple.
But, I mean, like, going back to the whole, like, how much John Leguizamo hated Zooey Deschanel. And so at the beginning of the movie, he tells him, like, I saw her crying before you got married. That's not something you tell people. It'd be different. He's like, hey, I saw her banging the best man before you got married. That shit you tell. But the whole, like, oh, yeah, she was sobbing. Like, that's not something you tell people, even if you saw it, like. Shit, that was pretty heartless. Also, let me tell you, as school's letting out and there's this whole, like, big world event happening, and, like, let me just pepper your fucking day with this shit.
And I guess, was he, John Leguizamo's going to find his wife, right?
Yeah, so they were all supposed to go to John Leguizamo's mom's house, I think. And so they go to the train station, but his wife couldn't make it. She was in Jersey for some reason. And so he had to go back and get her. So they're going to Philadelphia. Well, New Jersey's really close to Philadelphia. Anyway.
Yep.
And so it wasn't that big of a deal. Because at one point I was like, wait, you're going this way and your kid's going this way? Like, what kind of a...
Yeah, why not just keep her with you?
I mean, clearly it was a good choice since he died and she didn't. But, I mean, ultimately, it's like, you kind of take your kid with you when you do something like that.
And
Train to Busan has taught me anything. That's what you fucking do.
Well, that's the thing. Nobody knew anything about what was going on. So the decision for him to leave her with them, you would think like, oh, I know what I'm going to do is more dangerous than what you guys are going to do. So she should go with you. But at that point, they had no clue what was more dangerous or not.
Mr. Statistician over here.
Yeah, and he was so hardcore about his daughter. It's like, why don't you just keep her with you then? Why drop her with the...
Or why go after your wife, potentially leaving your kid, like, parentless?
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, stay with her and try to help and hope that the wife deals with her situation. But of course, that's, again, I think that's kind of a reference to 9/11 where people were trying to go to the buildings and find out what's going on and see.
I didn't get the whole 9/11 thing at all, but I guess it makes sense.
No, definitely, for sure. Because it's, the whole terrorist attack part, that's like the only thing going on at that time when the movie came out. Well, but it's easy to forget it. Yeah, I mean, well, that was fucked up.
That goes against the tagline.
That was fucked up. Never forget. It's been a while, is my point. It's been like 20 years. It's been 20 years. God damn.
Yeah, and again, like that's also like before we knew that this attack was happening all across the Northeast. And I remember when we were watching this last night, Justin made the comment of like, "Man, they really went out of their way to try to kill off all the New England Patriot fans."
Yes.
Well, they didn't get like the head one because Wahlberg was relatively untouched throughout all of this.
Which I guess we'll save that conversation till the fucking end. Like, why didn't he die?
And I also want to point out Wahlberg's performance in terms of his voice, where he decides to do this kind of like weird, yeah, and he kind of does like the weaselly, like kind of whiny voice. And I swear, I think it's because
He's trying to do the
Donnie Wahlberg. No, it's Mark Wahlberg. He's Mark Wahlberg,
Yeah,
right?
he's
Not
Marky
Donnie Wahlberg, because that's another.
That's
brother.
another guy, yeah.
Totally. But he's such a kind of like in real life was like a real kind of jock, like kind of
and he's
tough
always
guy.
and he's always playing those roles. So
Yeah.
this was like supposed to be something completely different.
Right. And I feel like in his head, when Shyamalan told him you're playing a high school teacher, he was like, oh, okay, a high school teacher. That means I should act like a really wormy, nerdy, like horribly, like geeky. No, like in his mind, he was like, oh, a high school teacher equals.
I thought he said patient man.
Somebody who's really like kind of weaselly acting, or talking kind of thing. Because he just sounds like he's whining every line of his dialogue, basically.
So, I mean, at this point, when John Leguizamo dies, they do this whole scene where he's staring at this slit in the Jeep that he's in, where all the toxins are getting through, because otherwise a Jeep would be completely airtight.
A ragtop Jeep.
Yeah,
like that's an airtight. Yeah, it's the slit in the ragtop Jeep that got you, right.
It was like, does that mean they could have just, like, stayed home? Could they just have stayed home and locked the doors? And got rid of all their... Yeah, they didn't know. That's right. They didn't know. They were running. Okay.
There is actually another movie, just a tangent. I can't remember what it's called, but I actually got to see it as one of those weird screenings where they give you a survey after. And it's a low-budget movie. It was made in L.A., and it's about a dirty bomb that hits L.A. And everybody has to tape up their windows and their doors, and they're trapped inside their houses. And the main character is this guy, and he barricades and seals up the house with his wife outside the house, and then she comes home and she's like, let me in. He's like, I can't let you in.
Oh, what a dick.
But that's the thing is, I remember around the 9/11 time with the dirty bombs that they had that thing where you should like tape up your windows and do that. But damn, I guess that's what they should have done. Well, I don't want to jump ahead, but we'll get there. But also, I want to bring up around the death scene of John Leguizamo and
not much of one. They left it really mellow so that you didn't see him like slitting his wrist. But that's what you're.
Oh yeah,
you're meant to think that's what is meant to happen.
And I want to that reminds me. I want to point out the horrible CGI blood in this movie when John Leguizamo slits his wrist. There's this little... It's really far away.
Yeah, I never noticed it.
But there's a little CGI spurt of blood that comes out of his wrist. But it's so far away.
CGI as well.
But I also want to point out the horrible CGI blood where there's actually kind of a cool scene shot where the guy lays down in front of the big industrial lawnmower.
Oh, yeah.
And then it runs over him. But this blood, the CGI blood that comes out is so weak. And it's not that I'm like, want there to necessarily be all this blood or whatever.
The real blood?
But it's like this sort of misty cloud of CGI blood just sort of briefly appears for a second when it runs him over.
Well, 2008 was a different time, John.
Yeah, I think they wanted to have it be for a wide audience, big success. But then I want to point out, okay, so then also we got to point out another great scene that I loved where it was then when they're driving shortly after that and you see the tree trimmer trucks and like the gardener and landscaper trucks all parked and randomly on the side of the road.
And they're empty.
And then all of a sudden there's all the hanging tree trimmer and like landscaping people are hanging from the trees.
Oh my god,
Remember that?
I'd never put it together. I guess the trees were angry at the tree trimmers.
That's what I thought. That was so hilarious.
I totally missed that.
I was like, that's the first people they killed.
That's
they
right,
went
the
for
gardeners.
They went for the gardeners and the
landscapers
first.
And I said nothing.
They're like, fuck you, lawnmower.
How do you like it?
You died first. But
Yeah, then it would be like the foragers.
exactly.
The foragers.
People going in and picking all the mushrooms.
There was no consent in that hug.
But so anyway, jumping kind of back, they hook up with those high school kids.
That's not back. That's forward. So we left out with. So John Leguizamo dies. They start going on after that fork in the road, and then they all end up on foot in different groups. Mm-hmm. And then one group gets it, and then the other group runs, and then that's when Marky Mark's like, "We got to." Well, then we have that scene where everybody's yelling at him to do something.
Oh my god! Which is
so
amazingly, it's annoying and also awesome at the same time. Zoe Deschanel.
Give me a goddamn minute. Why can't I have a goddamn minute?
And I can't remember the line. I want to learn that line that she says where she's like, we just can't be one of those people that stands and do nothing or whatever.
Like, you do something, Zoe.
It's so funny. Because there are that line and there are other lines in this movie where it's like, it's not something that a person would say. It's like M. Night Shyamalan speaking to us through the character. You know what I mean? Like it's like he doesn't think we get what's happening, so he has to have characters literally tell you what's going on.
In other reviews, that's something that really annoyed people, was that every time you wanted to move the story along, it was time to watch the TV. And that it was time to fucking watch the news so that you knew what was next in the story.
Yeah, which was pointless. Like, he put that stuff in to tell us what's going on, but it was so pointless because it's so obvious and easy to follow what's happening. I'll give Shyamalan credit for that, where, like, the editing is horrible in this movie, but...
Maybe he did his own editing.
I know, seriously. But in terms of, like, being able to follow what's happening and where they are, like, that's all fine. Like, you're never like confused about where they are or what they're doing. That's always really obvious, and where they're going next and things like that. But the editing is terrible. The scene where they are all in the one you're talking about, where they're all panicking and freaking out. Clearly, like, the idea of that scene is that we're meant to feel all stressed out, like, oh my God, this is so stressful and intense. And then the wind comes, right? And they all run.
He's like, stay ahead of the wind.
Which is first.
How am I supposed to do that, Marky Mark?
Like, it's literally you can see it blowing their hair and blowing around.
Yeah.
And then they run. And then maybe my favorite line of the entire movie is they're running and the music is playing and it's all adventurous and it's like, oh my God, and blah, blah, blah. And then they all stop and the wind stops and then Marky Mark says, nothing happened. And like literally, and then that's the end of the scene. And then it like goes to another thing. But
that's where they pick up the teenagers too, by the way.
Yeah, where they pick up the But it's like nothing happens and then Marky Mark says nothing happens. Like that's amazing. That's just like that's the pinnacle of
I think it's amazing that the movie is called The Happening and the whole fucking movie nothing really happens. There's no fucking monsters.
And there's no threat. There's no sense of danger.
Right. And then here's like in this point is where we really come to a really funny point in the story that so nothing happens. So they're trying to figure out why some people die and some don't, right? And so I think at some point somebody says this, and nothing's confirmed in the movie. And again, that's a big old part of it. Like they explained it in the very first like 2 minutes. But why did they live? Because they had good vibes. But who's got better vibes than that hot dog man? He was like he ran a nursery.
That's a huge problem of the movie.
There's a lot of problems in the movie.
But it's never explained. There's no lore to bring up the lore.
Lore galore.
And lore ties directly to rules. where you have to have rules in horror movies, right? Like you got to know, like Freddy Krueger kills you in your dreams.
Yes, T knows all about the rules. I mean, his favorite movie is Scream.
Right, exactly.
Well, yeah, it wasn't Scream. Yeah, and it's weird too, because like in this movie, like speaking of like the adverts that they have when they go to like the news stations, it's like every time they do that, it's to introduce another like red herring. Because initially they go with like the whole terror aspect of it, and they're like, oh well, maybe it's like nuclear power, or oh now it's only happening in the Northeast. And it's just like, all right, you're just like going through all these different things, but none of that's actually explaining anything that's actually going on.
And incidentally, if it had been like news reports, that somebody would be getting blamed. It's not just like randomness. It's more like those people did it. No, it was those people. That's how it goes.
And they have that shot in the movie where they, I think, show up to somebody's house, and in the background is the nuclear power plant.
Yeah, as they're walking through the field or something, which is right next to like a new home development that somehow requires a map.
Yeah.
What's up with that stupid map?
I don't even know. I don't remember. I don't remember.
Like you can't tell which way it's going.
It's like we're trying to find the least populated areas, but then here they are in a home development area where there's literally no one except for the other groups that were eventually flocking there.
Right. And that plot point of the when they were like, oh, this random character, he's a like real estate developer in the area. He knows where the best place to go is. Yeah, and then everybody's attention turns to that guy, and he's like, there's this little neighborhood in the middle of nowhere. Like, let's go there. It's the least populated area. They kept thinking like the least populated area was the best place to be.
Yeah.
Which also ties in with, because it's like, the terrorists are attacking like major city centers. Yeah. So we want to go in the middle of nowhere kind of thing.
Which is not a bad idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, just thinking about, like, how orderly the mob mentality was in this movie, that could explain why when everyone's committing suicide, like with the gun, everyone was just taking turns, and it just wasn't, all at once.
And that's the thing, too, is that we see in the movie, even right off in the very beginning when we see those first characters in the park who get affected by the thing, that it can affect your brain and the way that you act and talk. And there were multiple times in this movie where it's like the acting and the directing were so bad that I couldn't figure out if the characters were just if it was just bad acting and bad direction, or if they were affected by the drug and that's why they were.
Look at you! Yeah.
But then I thought that's kind of clever of Shyamalan, because he can kind of cover his own ass, where he's like, "Hey, it's not bad acting, it's just like it's the drug."
It's hard to tell because the guy he's a proven entity, right? As an artist, as a filmmaker. So it's like, I know that he has been quoted as saying that this is supposed to be a B movie, that you're just supposed to have fun. But how am I supposed to have fun if there's no fucking zombies? Okay, if it's a B movie or big monsters.
Yeah, and to get back to that, that's like the problem, is that it's never explained, and there's no rules about how this thing gets you or affects you. And so why Marky Mark and his group of people are unaffected, and everybody and his Funky Bunch are never affected, but everybody else is never explained, and there's no rules or anything attached to it. So it's just like
randomness.
It's literally plot armor. It's plot just armor, yeah. They need to live
narrative
for the story
armor,
to continue.
Yeah. Why did he live? Because he had to.
Did you say my joke?
I did say your joke, baby. You're very upset that you didn't get to see Marky Mark kill himself.
In a creative way.
I would have been, cool.
So yeah, we have to get.
Yeah, it's like the only reason he didn't die is because he was sweet talking.
Oh yeah, in the model home.
Oh my god,
that was pretty
actually funny.
I thought that was hilarious. Yeah.
Although, yeah, no.
You're just covering your bases.
So, okay.
Well, with the wind aspect, like in other movies, we have seen a wind as a threat. Tag probably comes to mind before anything else. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie. Not the one where they're playing the game Tag, but it's like a Japan movie, and all the like characters are Well, I don't want to spoil the movie, but basically, the opening sequence is a lot like Ghost Ship, in the fact that like you're in this bus and you see a bunch of like these Asian schoolgirls, and the wind comes through and literally cuts the bus in half. And everyone on the bus, outside of one person who was like bending over to like pick up a pencil or pen that she dropped, dies and gets cut in half. See, that was an actual threat. Here, it's just like
that just looks like a nice
nothing's
summer
actually
day.
happening.
So the
exactly.
So the kids, we got to get to.
Oh
the
my
kids.
gosh, the kids! All right, so
because that's another completely bonkers.
That was insane. Yeah.
Where they hook up with these young kids who start helping them and joining the group.
There's this outtake, and somebody had also pointed out that the outtakes that exist for the movie, they're not really outtakes so much as somebody filming relaxing, funny things that were happening in between takes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a behind the sings of Marky Mark asking M. Night like, this nobody looks like, it doesn't look like anybody lives here. It's a boarded up house. Why would we come here? Why would we think that there's fresh groceries in here? That was pretty hilarious. But anyway, so they go to this house because the little girl's hungry. Okay, little girl's hungry. There's no food in the model home because it's all fake.
Yeah.
And at this point, they've been running around so much, nobody packed a Nature Valley in their backpack or anything. So I get that. And they just go up to a random house to ask for food. And then hilarity ensues.
Yeah. First of all, like, the teenage boys kind of asked for it because they were being asked.
But what they get so mean, like, at the beginning of getting to know them, which was only the previous scene, so they were only in, like, a total of 2 or 3 scenes, and they were nice. They were asking him about his relationship. They were trying to give some helpful advice of, like, just do it. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden they turn into like these huge assholes.
Mm-hmm. They're like pounding on the door. And
they're trying to break in. They're calling like the homeowners or home inhabitants like names and shit.
And then the unthinkable happens. I was completely surprised. I didn't think it was going to happen.
Like the worst one was like, okay, so the first kid gets shot, and like that one was like you kind of saw that one coming. But then the other kid who's like facing this way and talking, and all of a sudden like the barrel of a gun comes out like very silently and slowly. Okay, that was pretty fucking insane. And I was and that like ugh. So that was, I would say that was good because it made me shiver.
Blows a big hole in his head.
Ooh.
They kill both teenage kids just out of nowhere, basically.
Had already lost their parents.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, they were treating it like a Call of Duty lobby, basically. Just shit-talking them. Calling the guys a bunch of pussies and like knocking on the door.
And then it's funny because the kids are dead. There's somebody in the house who's just killed them 2 seconds ago. And instead of running away in terror, they all gather on the stoop of the house and are like, oh my God, and this is so crazy. And it's like, you guys should be running away. He's going to shoot you. What are you doing? It was so weird. And again, it goes into the thing of characters who you think are going to be characters in the movie, and then they're just gone after 5 minutes. Yeah. And so then they immediately run to another house, which I guess is
the best part
by.
of the movie.
Yep. And then, like total morons, they do exactly to this next house what they just did to the previous house that got 2 people killed. They start pounding on the door and saying, let us in. It's like, you guys just got murdered.
Yeah.
For doing that 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, your red shirts just got murdered. You should really not be doing this anymore.
And then the old lady lets them in.
Who's surprisingly hospitable for how mean she is.
She appears to me to have no idea what's going on.
No, not at all. That's the whole point where she's like, I know you want to tell me what's going on with the world, but don't. Mm-hmm. Because, she's a hermit. She doesn't want to have anything to do with the world.
Right.
And vice versa. And she's cool with it. But then again, it's like, why don't you just pack him a lunch and send him packing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But she's like, gotta be real gritty about it. It's like, I suppose I should get you supper. I suppose I should.
Yeah, you can also stay here for the night.
Mm-hmm. That was a
then
great
you accuse
scene,
him of
though.
stealing.
She was great, actually. She was so creepy. I loved her.
Definitely. It felt like we were in a different movie at that point.
Yeah, it felt like she would have been a monster or something. I'm like, well, maybe she killed somebody. No.
And it also plays into like this movie on one hand tries to be this type of movie where it's like we're constantly moving from thing to thing to thing and it's all crazy and we're always on the move and something new and crazy is happening. But then it just takes this total detour where everything just stops and we're just going to do this weird dinner scene and hang out for a while.
And then out comes Chekhov's gun, right? Like, well, you see that house over there? It's got a tube you can talk to even though you're separate. And you're like, for fuck's sake, don't go to the tiny house with a talking tube.
Which I guess he thought that was tense, that they got split up and one group was in the other.
If you knew what was happening, but he didn't know he was split up until like he heard her voice. And then you realize they're in that split up house, which I don't know.
And again, it's another situation where the wind starts blowing and they start thinking, "Oh no, it's gonna get us." Close the windows and close the doors. They're in these barns that were made in the 1800s with these old windows and doors. That's not going to keep the stuff out.
Oh, sir, you should take it back a step. These two, like this woman, this tiny little girl, thought it was cool to go stomping around like nature in the morning. Why? Because it was like no wind? Because that's the only time you're afraid of it, when there's wind?
Also, in that part, that reminds me, there's a part where I think it's Marky Mark talking to the old lady when they're looking at the houses and they're doing stuff after the dinner. And in the background, you hear Zooey Deschanel and the little girl like laughing and joking around together, and sort of like having a good time together. And it's so weird because the pacing of the movie is so fast, and they were literally just like
in a tent
an hour earlier. Those two teen kids had gotten killed.
That's right. I forgot about the teen kids getting killed too.
And they're in the situation with everybody dying, going crazy. Like, why are they laughing and joking around and having a relaxed time together?
It's a really nice time in the country.
Yeah, it's very weird. It almost feels like this was like... it feels like it was edited, chopped down a lot. Like, maybe there was a lot more things that were happening in between this stuff where... And it was happening over... exactly.
Or not happening. Maybe nothing.
Yeah,
nothing probably happened during that time, though.
Because the movie's an hour and a half exactly, and usually M. Night's movies are around a couple of hours. I wonder if they cut like a solid 30 minutes out of this movie to make it bearable for people. But it felt really chopped, where we went from that house where the teens got murdered, and then to the old lady's house right away. Within minutes of that.
I wish it would have just been a movie about that lady's house. She was great. I miss her. That's the other thing too, though, is like at first when she started to turn and she was getting violent, I started getting a little tense, like something bad was going to happen. Then I was reminded that these people don't get homicidal. So what are you so worried about? I mean, you worried for her, okay, but it's like, oh, there she goes. Oh, there she goes again.
And that's a wacky problem in the movie too, right? In that scene, because they do that thing where she tries to smash through the wall.
She's trying to smash her head into the wall because she's not trying to get to him. She doesn't give a shit about him. She's trying to kill herself.
Right, but the weird thing is that the scene almost feels like it's trying
to
attack
him. Yeah, exactly.
Feel tense, like, oh my god, she's gonna smash through and get him. But it's like, yeah, no, she's just trying to kill herself. She's not trying to get him. And again,
she's just minding her own business.
And it totally undermines the whole...
The premise undermines the whole sense of danger, yeah.
Yeah, there's no, it's just, oh, okay, she's... And plus they kind of do the dementia thing a little bit with her, which makes it...
the whole, okay, so the fits of rage that she has before...
Where she's like, you're stealing from me.
You're going to kill me in my sleep. Oh my god, no.
Yeah, that was hilarious. That when he says, oh, he was like, no. That literally sounded like when someone's like, no, I'm totally not going to murder you in your sleep.
And you're like, that doesn't sound very convincing.
I'm not going to stab you when you turn your back.
No.
I would never do that. But, yeah, no. So, Then what? I'm actually. What,
Then
so
what? Let's see. After
this
this,
is where the movie really starts to like run out of steam
You
and
mean when
run down in terms of.
I can't remember when it was. There's a scene where another news report where there is a scientist on the TV saying we should see the worst of it tomorrow at peak hour, whatever. Like, what is that based on?
Yeah.
What is that science based on? How do you know anything about this?
And that's where he talks about, and this is another hilarious thing about the movie, is he talks, and the hot dog guy does this too, where they talk about how the plants are reacting to humans and
They're evolving real quick. Or
that they're
like that.
and he says the thing about how they've evolved to stop wasps from attacking
And it's true,
them.
actually, yeah.
And that kind of thing is real. And like the thing you were talking about where like the fungus can take over like an ant and make it act like a zombie. But it's hilariously stupid though, because they literally just say like all plants, every plant of every variety, all created this one single drug. Yeah, they conspired together.
Connived.
Not only did they conspire together to create a single drug or a single toxin that has a single
attacks
effect,
in certain
but they
spaces.
coordinated their attack for a certain time
In a
and
certain
place.
Space, yeah.
And to begin and end specifically where it's like, here's the beginning and here's the end of the attack. But it's like...
It's a 24-hour cycle, right?
And you don't have to be a botanist to know that grass is different than a redwood tree or different than like a blueberry bush. Like that, these plants, a rose bush.
You're just naming random
Totally. But these plants are different from each other. They're all plants, but they don't act the same way. They don't do the same things. They can't generate. They can't all generate like the same drug or toxin.
They all speak different languages. Okay, although I mean not to throw a wrench in your very solid argument, and not that there is a way to. No, that's a very solid argument. I'm definitely with you. But I'm just gonna nerd out for a tiny little bit. There was this great Radio Lab episode called From Tree to Shining Tree, I think it's called. Look it up. It's fucking amazing. Apparently there is a super microscopic netting network of fungi between trees where they use to basically communicate. And they're not communicating in the sense that you and I can communicate, but they're sharing resources. Mm-hmm. They can alert each other to pests, to certain dangers. It's insane. It's really cool. And they're doing it across species.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And similar to that, grass lawns like are all a single, not all, but like an entire lawn or like an entire park of grass is all a single plant. Ooh. Like if you have one lawn here and one here and they grow together, they'll become like a single entity.
That's cool.
So it is kind of true in a way, but it's also
grass isn't going to talk to a redwood for damn sure.
Right, and create a toxin that makes people freeze in their tracks, walk backwards 3 steps, and then calmly and collectively commit suicide in some really like logical way. You know what I mean?
Well, like I said,
find a gun, pick up a gun.
There we go. Yeah.
Shoot yourself. But we do get the gruesome death in the very beginning when the woman takes the chopstick out of her hair and stabs herself in the neck. That was maybe the only gruesome death in the entire.
Sorry, I'm still trying to think how I do myself.
And not everybody kills themselves either. I mean, maybe it's assumed they do, but when you see these big groups of people freezing, only a few people are killing themselves. Most people are just standing there.
I guess the assumption is that they did it. Yeah, they're waiting in line.
Well, that's because they're waiting in line.
They're doing it off camera, off screen.
But also, and then another thought I had while watching this movie was that another sort of theme that this movie seems to be making is climate change.
Right.
That the earth, the plants are reacting
to us,
to our negative impact and are getting us out.
Turns out it's man.
Totally. But then I thought, And in fairness, in 2007 or 8, when they made this movie, they didn't know back then. But in 2022, as we live in climate change, the actual real world effects of climate change are infinitely worse than what this movie basically tries to depict in a sci-fi
One day
way.
of like terror versus like
one day of people of some large amount of people dying in one location for a few hours or like a 48-hour period of time. Like, we've got like half of India underwater. Like,
Australia was on fire for like a whole year, wasn't it?
California's been on fire for
That's
the
true.
last
We're on
couple
fire.
years. Like, exactly.
Yeah,
It's
Vegas
like,
has been flooded.
the real climate change is a lot worse than what M. Night depicted for his horror or sci-fi movie
20 years ago.
20 years ago, which they couldn't have known back then.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that was...
It's 12 years ago, sorry. Wait,
12.
14 years ago. I can do math.
And then it sort of just peters out, right? Like, it's sort of just like, oh, it ended, and now we're all fine.
They decided, like, hey, if we're going to die, let's not die apart. Let's die together. And they're like, yeah, let's bring the little girl with us, too. And so they decide to meet up in between the two houses. And that's when I was like, I stopped the movie to check the time. And I was like, fuck, this is the end.
This is it.
I was so upset. I was like, really? It was the wind? I mean, I know it was the wind, but it's the wind carrying the toxins or some shit. Right. Which, does that mean that in a closed environment, my houseplants wouldn't be able to do shit? No, they're still doing shit. I see them.
Well, it clearly needs that wind to help move it around. If it wasn't a windy day, then it wouldn't have been as bad.
Yeah, okay. So, and then, of course, you get the super ridiculous ending of, like, we're back home, or we're in a home, we're living, everything's fine, so-and-so's going to school, I'm pregnant.
Which...
Yeah, our marriage is perfectly fine now. We're repaired. No worries at all at the house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we got a baby on the way.
It's like, that was a funny thing, is when they showed everything back to normal, there was literally, it looked 100% back to normal.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't
no bodies in the street.
Or even, like, less people. Because I was kind of wondering, like, maybe they'll show it be kind of sparse. Like, there's not a lot of people since a lot of people died.
Yeah, maybe they moved into a nicer house.
But there's a ton of people walking around on the sidewalk and in the streets, and there's a ton of cars and traffic. So you don't even get a sense that a lot of people actually died from this.
But it should have been, like, everyone, like, in a certain area, right?
Yeah, it should have been really sparse.
Except
like, there
for
shouldn't have been a lot of people. Almost like I kind of thought of the Avengers movie, the Endgame.
Oh.
After the snap, the sequel after the snap, when we see the cities and the town and people are kind of getting back to normal, but it's obviously like really empty and there's a lot of garbage on the streets because there's been no garbage pickup. And it should have been a little bit more post-apocalyptic.
That would be nice. But it looked really nice out there.
There was no consequences. Like things got so back to normal that there were like zero consequences.
Oh, and there was this little the Easter egg at the very end with the little girl wearing an Avatar backpack, and then the bus that picked her up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then the bus that picked her up. The number of the bus was 2010.
What's that?
The year that Avatar.
Oh, that it came out. Predicting another of M. Night's absolutely. That movie's unbearably horrible.
I haven't seen it.
It's that movie. The Happening is terrible, but it's fun to watch. The Avatar is like I was saying earlier in the episode, it's terrible and it's boring.
Oh, do you think he's really upset him, Shyamalan? He might be. Poor dude. What about that movie Old? Is Old really rough? I mean, it doesn't matter how rich you are. When you lose your artistry, that's got to be rough.
Yeah, that's true.
Does anybody... Well, did you see it? Did you like it?
I didn't like that one either.
Bad. It's terrible.
Like bad?
And I'm not even coming from it from the perspective of being a fan of the anime or anything. So I was going into it totally clean.
Oh no, we're talking about Old.
Oh, Old. I never saw that either. Yeah.
Okay, he says it's really bad too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The Visit, that's the one with the
Visit was the
grandparents,
last
right?
one of his that I enjoyed.
That's pretty
The
good.
creepy old people.
Yeah, that was pretty good. And had a really nice twist in it, too.
Well, we see in The Happening that he has a knack for creepy old people. That's his strength.
Yeah, he really should stick with that.
But I do want to point out, also address the pregnancy, which was very weird because there was not a single point in the movie ever where they talked about pregnancy or wanting to have kids or not being able to get pregnant. That was never a part of the story.
It's supposed to indicate that they're both the fact that they're both excited, and she's excited because she was the one that was more like, I don't know if I want this.
But I had a problem with it because they have a kid now, which is they now have the girl as that's their kid now. Like she's essentially theirs. So it felt weird because it was like, well, you are a family. Like you've gotten back together, and now you have a kid, and like you're a family. And so the pregnancy. Do you have any brothers and sisters, John? Yes, but it just felt weirdly tacked on. Like,
it is absolutely tacked on.
And yeah, so they all live happily ever after.
Until we go to France.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, they still live happily ever after, but,
this is not a very good coordinated attack by the plants because they need to attack everybody all at once.
They're making it sound like it was like a switch or like a switch being flipped, a evolutionary switch that might not be happening at the same time. That might be like different. It's not like less coordinated, more evolving into something happening.
Yeah.
Although why what's that?
Well, if it was more coordinated. If it was more coordinated, it would have fit every corner and then have everyone divulge into the Midwest.
But then it doesn't make sense that like it would happen the exact same way across. Like did somebody take a plant across the Atlantic or I don't understand. Damn it!
It was the European contingent of the plant army.
Oh my goodness!
They got their orders. They got the recipe for the toxin in their orders from the American plants. It took a little while to travel across the ocean. And then they were like,
wind had to really make his way over there.
Yeah, they were like, we've received the orders. We'll do our attack on the celebration of D-Day, the anniversary of D-Day. We'll attack France.
Oh my God. Yeah, I don't know. There's so many people love this movie, and I don't think I could bear to watch it again. Like I am having a good time, like, you know, making fun of it, and I'm really curious whether Marky Mark was just trying to make us laugh because I think he was, and
there were absolutely there were times in this movie where I was genuinely questioning: Is this a comedy? Was this intended to be a comedy or a parody? Joe's laughing in the background.
John Leguizamo.
Exactly.
He says everything with John Leguizamo in it is a comedy.
Exactly. It felt like it was intentionally a comedy.
That little video of like the guy letting the tiger or the lions tear him apart was hilarious. Oh my God! Yeah, they do. It's like it is shot like a comedy scene because it's like a horror scene at first when he walks up to it and he's putting his arm out. But then it cuts away, and it's like you hear screaming and the roaring. But then we cut back, and he's still standing. Yeah,
he's still standing. He's missing an arm, and then he offers his other arm, and the other tiger
kitty
literally pulls it off like it's made of Play-Doh.
Because it is.
Like it literally just detaches. It's like you could have grabbed his arm and pulled it, and it would have just pulled off. And he's sort of staggering around like...
It's too comical. Like, if he had, like, thrown himself into the pit and he was immediately attacked, that would have been gruesome and scary. But it was the lighting, the fact that, like, the camera was really, like, right in front of him, even though he's supposed to be, like, in the den, right? Mm-hmm. And the fact that he has to offer his limbs, because they're not really that interested to begin with.
They don't really care.
They're like, we just ate. So, that was really hilarious. And then, of course, we got that moment of Marky Mark singing his way into like not getting shot in front of when the teenagers got killed. He starts singing the was it CCR or something? I can't remember what he was singing.
Yeah, that was weird. I forgot about that.
But you know, like M. Night's also known for that. Like in Signals, there was that scene where, you know, it's what's it, Mel Gibson, Joaquin Phoenix, and a couple of kids, right? And then at one point, the kids are wearing like tin hats or aluminum foil hats, and because they don't know what's happening. And just to be on the safe side, they wear some too. So that's like that's the comedy, right? So he injects comedy a lot in his movies, which is it's really well done. I think that's a really good element of his movies.
Except in this one, because he fails so hard to create any real tension that when he does the comedy that's meant to cut the tension, it's not.
It wasn't over. Yeah, because sometimes in horror movies, you need, if it's going to be a horror comedy, it's got to be like over the top. We're all rolling around, you know, we're all laughing, right? Like Mars Attacks or you know, Shaun of the Dead or something like that. You know, where it's where you're literally laughing, not so much as like, oh, that was weird.
And then he like when they each did their little weird confession that they had like talked to somebody else outside the relationship. That was also weirdly goofy. Like it didn't make sense. They were
that
trying
was
to be
weird.
sort of funny and whatever, and it was just like that doesn't even.
It doesn't happen that often, but when I get hit on, I brag about it to Joe. I'm like, guess what happened today?
But yeah, so.
The Happening.
I enjoyed it.
Will you watch it again?
Maybe maybe at some point in the future. This is a good movie for anyone who wants to intentionally watch a bad movie.
Yes.
And then like make fun of it while you watch it.
Because it is surprisingly
it's good in that way.
And it is surprisingly solid when it comes to the basics of filmmaking, right? Like, because it's an M. Night Shyamalan. Everybody involved is very good at their craft. So the cinematography is going to be good. The lighting's going to be great. I know you had issues with the editing, but it's not so bad that it's unwatchable in terms of the editing.
I think the editing was bad because I really get the feeling that this movie may have been a 2-hour plus movie, and then the studio.
Can you imagine if it was 2 hours? Sorry, John, but that would have been real. I might have gotten the toxins and killed myself.
No, I think this movie definitely benefits by only being an hour and a half. It could have
been 88 minutes too.
Yeah, no, I remember looking at the runtime when it started and thinking, "Oh, good, okay, it's only an hour and a half. It's not." Because I'm pretty sure most of his movies are
like 2
on
plus,
the 2 hour mark. Yeah. But yeah, no, I really feel like they maybe cut like a solid 30 minutes because the way the editing is, it really feels choppy at certain points where we're just kind of jumping from place to place, which actually in some ways I think benefits the movie too because it never gets boring really, and it always keeps moving along. So it's good in that way.
That's true.
You know. I never, like I said, I never felt like, oh my God, when is this going to end?
I think the part, because I was pretty engaged, and I think the part where I was very annoyed and I felt like I'd been tricked was when they started filming The Wind. When they started filming The Wind, that's when I realized, you're never going to give me monsters, are you? Are you? And then that's when I was being a little angry at it.
It looked like they maybe just got like a helicopter to fly around.
I thought at some point it was going to be a couple of wind shots, but then like there were just more and more, and they never changed. Like I thought at some point, like at least a fucking damn tree would move or something. My plants move more than the plants in that movie.
They should have had like the Evil Dead evil trees that smash into the cabin.
Yeah, that would be
something like that. Actual
or like spores trees that kind of go like. That get sprayed into people's face and
like Prometheus.
Yeah,
that was a great scene in Prometheus. Or no, is it? Or not Prometheus, but the one after Prometheus when they land on the alien planet and the spores get into them. But yeah, this movie definitely.
But I think like it definitely Marky Mark makes the movie. If it weren't for him, it wouldn't have been super watchable.
Yeah.
Oh, Joey says that they could have used Will Ferrell as well.
Definitely.
Yep, that would help play up the reaction shots, which is primarily what people remember the movie for. But yeah, like at the end of the day, you know, I always wanted there to be an actual threat and just more tension. And when you're devoid of an actual threat, it's really hard to like stay.
Joey also says that they could have used The Rock, and I do agree.
If it was The Rock as the main character.
Yeah. As a science teacher, that would have been great.
He could have done that.
Fuck yeah, he could have done that. I'm a big fan.
Definitely. He probably would have been better. Because at least he would have been like, he would have done he would have been more like a little
Action.
bit comedy.
Oh yeah, because
aspect.
that's his forte for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys ever watch that SNL skit of him as an evil scientist?
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
Nice.
Let's not get into it, but look it up.
Yeah.
I'll look it up after the show. But yeah, all in all, definitely not my favorite M. Night movie. This is only the first time I've rewatched it since I saw it in theaters.
See, that's another thing I was thinking about too, because you mentioned you'd saw it in the theater before, and I was thinking I could see how people would be pissed and really not like this movie if you saw it in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
If you paid money to go to a theater and see it, then I could see just being like,
"Fuck
this
you,
movie, fuck this movie." But watching it for free,
people walk
streaming,
out.
It makes it much more entertaining at home and everything because you're not invested in that way.
I mean,
yeah, exactly, and you can just turn it off.
Yeah, you could have left it any time.
Laugh and go to sleep.
Yeah, exactly. But sitting through that in the theater, especially after I don't remember what order this came out with his movies, but if you saw The Sixth Sense and then went to this, you would definitely be pissed.
Is that? I'm trying to. I mean, can we look up the order his movies came out? Because I feel like
Sixth Sense is like 2001.
Yeah, and then I feel like Unbreakable
was probably the next.
Yeah.
Was that his next movie?
I don't know. I want to say Signals.
What was it? Oh, was it Signals? It might have been Signals.
I mean,
all those three movies were so solid. I really liked Signals. I really liked.
Okay, it was Sixth Sense in '99. Unbreakable was 2000. Sign was 2002. Then
because I remember it was like The Village and Lady in the Water.
Lady in the Water, and then The Hat.
That's where he started using it. Yeah.
But now that being said, after this movie came out, one of his next projects was Avatar, and after that, it was After Earth. And I remember when they were advertising After Earth, which was another very terrible movie, his name was nowhere to be seen on any of the adverts for the movie because of how poorly received the happening was.
This movie, they knew After Earth was bad when they put it into theaters, and I think that's probably also why they were just like, let's not associate him. And with Avatar too, which flopped pretty much, it was like, his name kind of became box office poison at that point. He kind of redeemed himself though with, I liked the sequel to Unbreakable.
Yes.
And then the third Unbreakable, I kind of liked it. I thought it was cool. Split was the sequel, and then...
No, it was Unbreakable. Glass was next, and then it was Split, wasn't it?
No, Split was second. Unbreakable, Split, and then Glass.
Oh, gotcha. And those I thought those were great.
Mm-hmm. I liked Glass. I didn't like the ending of Glass, but I liked it. And I liked Split.
And Samuel Jackson was so good in those. I mean, like, I was really impressed with his, like... Because, you never get to see him, like, doing a character like that, He's always, like, doing, like... I don't know, like stronger or more boastful characters. And in that one, he was like evil mastermind. It was really cool.
I really think, like I was saying earlier, M. Night pretty much defined in a lot of ways what like a modern superhero movie is.
Right, because they're like as a antagonist as like lead and really humanizing heroes and whatnot,
and really based in the real world kind of feel, where it's like, I mean, Unbreakable feels like the first episode of Heroes,
right? Basically. I mean, and Bruce Willis in that was really, I mean, those were really great endings to in that movie. You just kind of you end up to end with a big twist, which is like his thing is just to leave the movie like on a high note, on a very surprising high note, and it's a good technique. But then of course he became known for it. Exactly.
Well, the problem with that is he paints himself into a corner, and
like
then
it's even isn't it like a Robot Chicken joke too? Like the what a twist.
Yeah. The twist, having to have the twist. Which this movie had a weird sort of twist, which was it was the plants all along. Oh, that is also because you know how we always joke about how man is the real monster.
Turns out it's man.
Turns out man is the real. This movie is turns out nature is the real monster.
But only because we were being dicks.
Yeah.
And that if we weren't called Handle With Scare, we could be called Turns Out It's Man.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe Lore Galore.
There's no lore. They needed to have rules. There were no rules. They needed to have the scene where the scientist says
with the fungi and
this
with
is what's happening and this is how you get it and this is how you avoid it. You know, movies like The Bird Box, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Or the one where people can't make noise with
Bird
Jim
Box,
from
yeah.
The Office.
What's that one called again?
But those are movies that do this better, you know, where it's that same kind of thing, but they give you really defined rules of like you can't look at the monster or you can't make sound or whatever.
And those movies I really like Bird Box. I know a lot of people put it down, but I thought it was neat. I dug it. Quiet Place.
Well, a quiet place is definitely the better of the two.
Even Quiet Place 2 is pretty good.
And you know, luckily, Fun Guy is going to come into play in our next movie.
And I haven't seen the next one either.
Me either.
So it'll be a fresh watch for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad. So next week we'll be looking at Gaia, which was released in 2021. It's streaming on Hulu. Kind of like what I just randomly stumbled across that I really enjoyed. So for a lot of people, it'll probably be a blind watch. But very interesting story. Shrooms do come into play. I'll just read off like the synopsis off of IMDb to see if you guys have an idea. An injured forest ranger on a routine mission is saved by two off-the-grid survivalists. What is initially a welcome rescue grows more suspicious as the son and his renegade father reveal a cultish devotion to the forest.
It almost, I don't want to, like I say, I haven't seen it, but it almost reminds me of that movie. I shouldn't even bring it up because I can't remember the name of the movie, but that movie that came out recently where the group of old friends go on that camp hike, like in Sweden, and they come
The Ritual?
Yeah, and they come across that
movie.
cult with like the forest, the pagan forest creature.
The big old demon that's like super huge. I love that movie so much.
I don't know why, but for some reason this movie you've picked makes me think of that movie. But I don't know if they're going to be similar at all, but I don't know.
And do we have any plans?
You'll have to wait to find out.
Halloween, or is it a TBD? It's Halloween.
I don't know what we're doing yet on that front.
Okay,
I'm still gonna figure out what we'll do to.
I also
wrap
haven't
up
picked out a costume, so if you guys have any ideas.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, we should definitely at least dress up for that episode for Halloween.
Yeah, okay, and then after yours, do we have one more, or is that done for the month?
We need a fourth.
Oh, that's right, we need the one more.
We haven't picked it out yet. I know we've talked about a couple of different titles. We'll figure it out. But in the meantime, of course, if you guys are looking to keep in contact with our podcast, you can reach us on Twitter at Handle with Scare. You can also find all of our video content on YouTube at Handle with Scare Pod. But for now, that's going to do it for us here tonight for our podcast. I've been your host, Emily Drunk, joined, as always, by my co-hosts, Holly Hooch and John. Nice. And, of course, we'll see you back next week for Gaia.
I was holding on.